You see, when Paul said there's things I don't know, he was not unwilling to say there are things that I do know. And his word was, there is something that matters. And it's Jesus. And it's the gospel. So how can you tell? How can you tell if you are unequivocal? How can you tell if you are sold out? You tell it in the way you live, and you tell it in the way you die. You see, Paul knew that he was marching towards the end of his life. 2 snapshots and it's yours. Joy Craig showed up at church because her mother dragged her there. Joy was in one of those dresses that as a pastor you're saying, oh my goodness, hello, pleased to meet you. I mean, it was inappropriate. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? And I just thought, wow, did nobody give you the dress code? But she looked so angry. And Joy was also tearful. And she sat down with me and her mother said, could you talk to my daughter? This is the first time she's been in church in a long, long time, and she and her husband have had problems. That is the greatest understatement I may have ever heard. Joy's husband was in prison for a felony. She had just gotten out of prison because of that same charge, and it was because the Joy and her husband were Satanists. They had started a coven. They had taught people how to control demons. They were all the way deep. They played for the other team. And this gal is sitting in my church after church is over on a pew with me as everyone else is leaving the auditorium, and I realized I'm alone with her. I mean, there were other people in the lobby, but and she's telling me the story. Oh, we were able to control demons and do this, and we could make them do this, and one time it did this, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm used to things like, I gotta quit smoking. But this lady is sitting here, and she's been smoking a whole nother kind of thing. And she said, to be honest, I don't like Christians very much. And I said, well, I can understand that being your affiliation. But I said, you know, why? And she said, well, I was growing up in churches where they always talked about hellfire and hellfire and hellfire. And I finally decided, well, I want to know about the guy that's running the fire. And she said, she literally had gotten into this through a turnoff from a hard-nosed, judgmental Christianity. And I said, well, then I probably only need to tell you one thing. God is in love with you. He loves you so much. He was willing to give his very son so that you could have life. And she said, are you serious? And I said, dead serious. We began to study. Joy came to the place of saying, I know that I need to give my life to Christ, but I'm frightened about what my husband will do. And I said, I understand. But here's the deal. You've got to decide if you're going to trust Jesus. And we finally went down on a Tuesday night, and with a few folks praying and singing, I baptized Joy into Jesus and brought her up out of the water. Now, my mom and dad were thrilled when I became a Christian. But this sweet lady, when she came up out of the water and I hugged her, I could feel her shivering, and I wondered if the thought in her head, what will her husband do when he confronts her? He was in felony charges on assault. Joy and I began to pray. And when she came to me and said, Jeff, they've dropped down enough of the charges that he's getting out, and he wants me to come pick him up. Okay? Do you want me to, excuse me, do you want me to go with you? She said, no, I'm not alone. I waited with bated breath, and then I got the phone call. It was her, and she was crying. Joy, listen, God is with you. She said, just please. When I went to get him, when we met, when we talked, somebody in the prison had already shared Jesus with him, and he's given his life to Christ. And he wants to know if you'll baptize him. And I said, well, let me think about that one. Let me tell you, when God just swoops in and when it happens, and by the way, those two are leaders in our church. They're blessing in our church and they're telling their story. When you see it lived out, you know when someone says, I am sure about this, Jesus is worth it. But when you really believe it, when you really understand it, is not when you see it lived out, but when you see it died out.